All right, it looks like we are live. Here we go. So, welcome to the Real Estate Happy Hour. I'm your host, Chris Wright. I am a real estate agent with the Oxford Property Group. So, on today's episode, we're delving into the polarizing world of short term rentals. All over the country, short term rentals have revolutionized the way we travel, stay, and experience new places. But with innovation comes scrutiny. And the rise of platforms like Airbnb and VRBO has sparked heated debates amongst policymakers, residents, and property owners alike. Do short-term rentals bolster local economies, offering travelers, unique experiences while, providing additional income streams for homeowners? Or do they disrupt communities, exacerbate housing shortages, and raise concerns about safety and neighborhood character? In this episode, we'll dissect the pros and cons of short-term rentals from both, municipality and property owner perspectives. And joining me are a panel of experts who bring diverse insights and experiences to the table. Together, we're going to explore multifaceted landscapes of short-term rentals, examining their impact on local regulations, housing markets, and the broader societal fabric. So, whether you're a homeowner considering dipping your toes into the short-term rental market, or a policymaker grappling with regulatory decisions, or simply someone who's just curious about, the evolving dynamics of modern travel and accommodations, this is going to be the episode for you. So let's navigate these complexities. We're going to weigh the trade-offs and uncover truths behind the polarizing debate on short-term rentals. And welcome to the discussion. We'll talk to you on the other side. This is the Real Estate Happy Hour, and I'm your host, Chris Wright. It's a fun place where we talk real estate, pop culture, and what's trending. Hey, I might even give you some good advice, so grab yourself a drink, sit back, relax, and take a listen. Unless you're driving, of course. I'll see you guys on the other side. All right, so here is our panel. Thank you, guys. And Britt's taking us on a tour. All right, so let's welcome our panel. First, we have Liz Connors. She's an advocate for short-term rental. She was born and raised in Saratoga Springs, grew up in a short-term rental, and now she and her husband own 2 short-term rental properties in Saratoga. And she's also a real estate agent, so congratulations to that. She's currently involved in a group of 16 short-term rental advocates who've put together a petition, and they're all very well educated on what's going on with regulations and current proposals in Saratoga Springs. Welcome, Liz. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, I am from the Saratoga Springs Rental Rights Alliance Group. We are a bipartisan group with just concerned citizens, really just trying to uncover the facts, one objection at a time. We know that renting has been always such an intricate part of this city in many ways. And I do want to say that this group is not against short term rental regulations. We just are asking Saratoga Springs City Council to take more time to study in a more thorough and thoughtful manner, just to make sure that both short term and long term rentals are safe and fair for everyone.
Thank you so much for adding that. Our other panelist is Todd Shimkus, and Todd is the president and CEO of the Saratoga County Chamber of Commerce, a position he's held since 2010. Long time, Todd. In this role, Todd promotes local employers in the for-profit and nonprofit sectors, and he implements programs to ensure that these employers and local community continues to thrive, grow, and succeed. He often says that where people stay is where they spend their money, to indicate his support for short-term rentals. But he also favors a registration process for all short-term rentals that includes proof of insurance, a local emergency contact for each property, and to allow for an inspection by the fire department. Todd thinks the proposed registration fee is way too high, and local homeowners who rent their properties just for a short couple of weeks as a tradition should be allowed to continue to do so. Welcome, Todd. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Chris, for having me. And actually, you just said everything I would have wanted to say in an introduction. So thanks for that.
No problem. We also have Dan Wade here. Now, Dan Wade is an attorney He's been practicing since 2004 in the areas of real estate, title, and LLC formations. Currently works with the firm Ionello Anderson. Dan is currently a director on the board for Southern Adirondack Realtors and sits on the Community Outreach Committee. Dan thinks that short term rentals should be allowed, but feels that it has to be a balanced approach. What he sees right now are municipalities struggling to find the right balance between property owner rights, the right to peaceful enjoyment by neighbors of short term rental properties, as well as fairness to owners of existing future hotels, motels, bed and breakfasts, etc. Welcome, Dan. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me. Yeah, that's really the struggle is finding the proper balance. And I think, as Liz put it, given the proper time that's due to fully investigate and get to what that balance looks like, and not be afraid to adjust it as time goes by if it doesn't work.
Awesome. Last but not least is Britt Gayeton. Did I say your name right? Britt, did I say your name right? I can't hear you. You may be on mute.
Yes, I was. You did. Yes.
All right, perfect. Because it doesn't look like it's spelled, but so thank you. Um,
Yeah.
so Britt, she is the creator of the Facebook group Saratoga Short-Term Rental Advocates, which is different from the Alliance group that we mentioned earlier. She's an advocate for short-term rentals and believes there is a way to operate vacation rentals, without impeding on neighborhood integrity. Her company has worked with dozens of investors in this space. They manage the guest experience by executing the cleanings and setting up between guests, attending to guest issues. They perform pre and post guest walkthroughs. And in general, she's the boots on the ground for the out of state homeowners. She's been in business since July 2021 and currently manages 20 properties in Saratoga and neighboring towns. Welcome, Brett. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. That's that's a great all encompassing. I really just like people to know that I've been fortunate enough to see inside thousands of turnovers, essentially is what we call them. And I know that there are some fears, but for the most part, there's ways that we can figure it out.
Well, thank you so much, all of you, for taking time out of your weekday. I know this is money time, so I won't keep you long. We're going to have a hard stop in just 1 hour. So I'm going to start with you, Liz. Talk to me about the Alliance, some of your strategies, some of the initiatives that you currently have going on.
Oh, wow. This alliance, like Britt said, is very new. Britt, if you want to join forces, we would love to have you. uh,
I do. I think we need to connect.
yeah, definitely. Which thank you, Chris, for bringing us together. Um, our like I said, it's very new, and it was just a group of concerned people being like, okay, these regulations are a little bit too crazy. How can we do some research and find something? It's a very complicated issue. How are we going to find something that makes everyone happy? We're not. But how about a compromise? Yes, Todd, I agree with you. The fee is way too high, and Dan, you might know this, and Britt, you too. But the fees in Lake George, and we also looked at Cape Cod and Newport, are around $100 to $150 for a short-term rental permit. I think that's fair. So does the Alliance. Um, we are, like I said, every objection, every issue that comes up that's brought to us through Nextdoor, through our Facebook group, through the city council, we are looking into. We also, our group is so beautiful in that we all excel in different areas. I don't mind being in front of the camera. And then we've got people who are diving into the legal and doing some research there. And then we've got people managing the Facebook group and everything there. So like the community that we've created in the past 2.5 weeks, just it just stands to what Saratoga Springs is. And this is why I am so proud to be a citizen here. This is, people are so passionate. You can feel the passion through the group. And even at the city council meeting, when people get up, I'm telling you, the people that got up last night, they were nervous as hell. They were
Mhm.
shaking. And I was like, good for you. If you're going out of your comfort zone to stand up for something that you want. Um, I'm also, I am a Saratoga native, born and raised. I grew up in homes that were rented. Chris, I was telling you about that. Um, I grew up on Caroline Street. We rented that house. We actually ended up moving to Wilton, and we rented our house every track season. We actually rented to a couple jockeys, which was like kind of cool. I always like to brag about that. And
Hmm.
then we also had some owners too. And with that, we actually every summer we spent family time together. Like we went away and we had a family vacation that paid for the family vacation. Later, as we all got, my sisters and I got older, that money would go towards our semesters in school. Um, right now, my parents are both retired and they don't rent anymore, but they're grateful for that because their house, the rentals have been did pay for some of their taxes as we were out of college and everything else. So, and they were able to retire. Um, I mean, I'm very passionate. I'm really proud of our downtown. I'm proud of the community, and I'm like really mostly proud of all the workers, restaurants, retail, all our downtown community that work tirelessly to make sure that our guests who come visit here have the most amazing stay and they go home with memories. Chris, I do want to read something. I want to read an Airbnb quote, a review that we received. My husband and I, we are super hosts. 6 years, we've been super hosts, and we have over 1,000 stays. This was just one of the quotes, and it wasn't hard to pick it because we have so many. But
Hmm.
this is from Brienne. Location is perfect. We walk to a lot of places and the neighborhood is just gorgeous. The Victorian homes and the park not being far from everything. Shopping and eating was everything we hoped for. We did not have a bad meal in Saratoga. Classic. The National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame is just a block away and was really beautiful museum to see. We look forward to returning in the summertime and years to come. I am so proud that they felt compelled to write that and they stayed in my home.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So, Todd, I have a question for you. And this is a great piggyback on what Liz said. How has this short-term rental reshaped the traditional hospitality industry in Saratoga Springs?
Yeah, so I think like you said in the introduction, the quote I use all the time is where people stay is where they spend their money.
Hmm.
So what's happened here is we've expanded through short-term rentals the number of people that can stay in close
Hmm.
to downtown Saratoga Springs or
Right.
in the surrounding communities. It's become a way for us to capture more people, right, that are going to spend their money in our
Yeah.
local community. So I don't, certainly the chamber, and I don't think any of the elected officials either wants to do any harm to that particular. We may disagree over some of the details in there, right? Like the fees and maybe some of the inspection, parameters. But
Hmm.
at the end of the day, we want to make sure short-term rentals can stay. Let's use the Belmont Stakes as an example. So
Yeah.
we're going to have 50,000 people here at least on June 8th, right? We don't have room for 50,000 people. We got maybe, I don't know, 2,500 hotel rooms within the city, maybe 3,500 in total within the county. So we want to capture another 12 to 1,500 in the city, another 2,000 in the county, if that's the number of short-term rentals are there. Because
Hmm.
if they stay here as opposed to Lake George or Albany, they're going to spend their money here. So
Right.
they become an essential part. But to Dan's point, and I think everybody else, the key is you got to find a balance because that does, especially where there are some absentee landlords, that does create negative repercussions for local neighborhoods. And finding a way to make sure that doesn't happen is incredibly important because one mistake, one problem, as we've seen with like Caroline Street, right? One problem can identify you in a way you don't want to be identified. And we've got to be able to say as a community, we did everything to make these experiences not just fun and exciting, but also safe.
So, from a municipal perspective, what are some of the primary concerns or challenges associated with the proliferation of short-term rentals? And Todd, you can start, but I'd like to hear from you, Dan, as well.
I think part of the challenge now is the online portals are secretive in terms of where these properties are. It's you don't know until you're in the system and you're making plans, right? And so it's hard for us to collaborate and communicate with all the short-term rental businesses that are in operation in our community because we just don't know where they are or who they are. So at the very least, a registration process, right? Again, let's not talk about fees, a registration process so we can work together in the same way we do with bed and breakfasts and the city center and our attractions. We could be so much better as a resort community if we had the engagement of, and then we could actually communicate about some of the challenges that are there, right? I
Mhm.
think part of our problem, and Liz could probably, speak to this better than I can, is that it's hard to notify people these days of what's going on in the community because nobody reads one newspaper anymore. We are scattered in terms of how we get our information. So what might seem like this urgent thing that's happening, we've been talking about for 2 years. And getting more people at the table throughout that process would have been way easier if we had had a registration process and we could have hit send on a simple email to everybody that was doing this.
Dan, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And first and foremost, again, Chris, thanks for having us and putting this panel together.
Hmm.
And kudos to everyone who participated in the process last night at the Saratoga City Council meeting. I think that's vital, and I think that's important. A lot of people don't often remember that their elected officials work for them, and that it's important that they participate in the process. And for some reason that process doesn't work, or if those people are not serving the interest the way that the people think they should, then they have the ability to change that if they want to. That's one of the beautiful things about the way our governments are set up. Um, and yeah, I think just to give a little bit of backdrop, on the state level, there is a bill that is pending that would put some regulation onto short-term rentals.
Hmm.
And so I think what we're seeing is that might be putting a little pressure on some of these local municipalities to sort of jump and spring more into action to get their own municipality STR regulations into place. Because every municipality, as we know, has its own unique challenges, its own unique makeups. So what's important is the first step is that a municipality really needs to do that study, like Liz said, and really determine what their goal is going to be. And
Hmm.
once they've identified and been able to sort of put down on the paper what that goal should be, then we can have the conversation on how we best or best as best as we can find a way to accomplish that goal. And yeah, we're not going to be able to satisfy everybody or make everybody happy, but at least everybody will understand what the goal is so that everybody can work together to try to find a way to resolve that.
That's awesome. So Brett, I read yesterday, New York City has cracked down so hard on short-term rentals that some short-term rental owners have gone to the black market. They're not on Airbnb. They're not on VRBO. They've gone to Craigslist. They've gone to private
Yeah.
listings and things like that. Are you seeing that in your business as well?
So I am as I said, I really like to do things in a compliant way, which is
Hmm.
why I help my homeowners go through all of these different steps.
Right.
But yes, on the forums, on the different forums that I'm part of, I have seen homeowners kind of freak out about the owner occupied part of the regulations that they put out in New York City,
Hmm.
and giving suggestions to each other to do those kinds of things. Yes.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
you're starting to see them on Facebook Marketplace. They're just
Yeah.
everywhere. So
Which that
Well,
was happening anyway, but I feel like this is just a different level of it. And it really is like seems like it's just protecting their asset. People are not trying to do this in order to like get over on anyone.
mhm.
When you've made it this kind of investment and then it's being threatened, I feel like people get scared.
So Todd, so if they go on places like Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or the black market, now aren't they avoiding fees and taxes when they do it that way?
Well, I think under the rules that the municipality is trying to put together here,
Hmm.
you would be required, regardless of what platform you're using,
Okay.
to register. And what would happen, let's say you didn't, is your neighbor reports you because of a complaint, and
Mm.
suddenly you're going to have code inspectors there and the fire department there.
Now you're in trouble.
And again, that's why if we know where they are, if the ones that want to do it responsibly can report,
Hmm.
communication, collaboration becomes so much easier. But again, we're not even there yet. So
Right. Right.
that's why I think it's important that we get something in place, a registry in place, and
Okay.
begin that process as soon as possible. And like Dan said, I think we want to get ahead of the state, because I
Yeah.
don't know that we want the state imposing rules on Saratoga Springs, especially given some of the traditions we have for people renting their home, particularly in the summer season.
Liz, you look like you
So
wanted to chime in. Yeah. Go
well,
ahead.
yeah, I just and you know what? Dan might have more insight than I do, but we are looking into this right now. Actually, Jessica is meeting with Dylan this afternoon. We've met with almost every city council member because I think that meeting face to face is very important. We can't just be like screaming and then be like, "Oh, we don't want to meet with anybody and work this through."
Hmm.
We obviously want to work it through. I could not agree with Todd more about registration. We need a registry. The black market rental is that could be very dangerous,
Hmm.
and that could be even worse than the situation that we have now, for people who are having issues. So Dan, actually, like I said, we have an attorney on our team, but who's looking into this. But what we've gathered so far is that the state regulations that are being proposed are actually much less regulatory than the current city's legislation that's being proposed. And we were actually saying, let the state come down with it. We'd rather have
Yes.
that than what's being given right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as is typical, on the state levels, they try to do more of a broad stroke, right? And then they leave it up to municipalities to make it more restrictive if they choose to. And this is where we come into trying to determine what that balance is with homeownership rights, where people on one side want to argue that people should be able to do whatever they want with their property, and also the city's interest in wanting to make sure that we have a healthy and safe place for people to stay. So the registration is probably a good idea to have that in place, so at least we can identify and communicate with the people who want to do this responsibly. And then we gotta need to take a look at, at what point do we have laws already in place that can already be used to treat
Hmm.
things such as nuisances in properties?
Yeah.
If there's a complaint for noise or whatnot, there's already laws in place to deal with those types of things. We don't need to sort of double, or recreate the wheel on some of those types of things. But let's get down to the actual issues at hand and talk about making sure that the properties are safe, that the people have a safe place to stay, that we know where we're staying, and that everybody, pays their fair taxes as far as businesses go, because, an
Yeah.
STR is a business. Let's not forget that. And also just remember that it does contribute to the tourism of the area. And it's an important, just as Todd had mentioned, there's going to be a lot of people coming in during the summer track season. And the more people that Saratoga Springs can collect as a city to keep in here, the more money that's going to come locally into the area to be able to improve this area. Also keeping in mind, the effects of short-term rentals on long-term rentals and pushing those prices up, also pushing homeowner prices up for the houses in the area. But these short-term rentals are really a way to help supplement the income and make these homes affordable and keep them in the condition that they're in. Saratoga is known for its beauty, its health history and horses, but it's also a very beautiful place for people to visit, and that's why they come.
Great.
I will say in regards to that, Dan. Oh, sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
No, go ahead and piggyback. I have
Oh,
a question for Britt after you say that.
okay. I have a lot that I want to say, but I think that collectively here, like as I sit on this panel, we are all trying to move in the same direction together, which I love. That makes me really happy. And in regards to keeping the houses beautiful, like my short-term rental, my husband and I spend more on flowers, our porch decor, uh, our furniture there than than our own home. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
um,
and that makes sense because if you treat a business like a business, you're going to invest and reinvest that money into the business if you want
I
it to be successful.
yeah,
yeah,
and
I,
actually, in regards to that, I do think, and like I said, I am not a lawyer. I'm not a finance person, but is there some way that we could work with the city? And Todd, you may know that we can and we can work with Airbnb or these short-term rental platforms and charge a 1% bed tax or something that gets back to the community. Therefore,
Yes.
like, the community is still making money. It's not coming out of the short-term rental owners' pockets, but it's coming out of the tourist pocket who want to come and stay here and spend money.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, my question for you, because I thought about this as we were talking about the black market, safety. And Britt, I'm going to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
There's safety concerns, security concerns, liability for both guest and host. You, as
Hmm.
a property management company, tell me about some of the challenges that you working with security and safety. And Todd said a minute ago, if these things aren't above board, then if that happens, it only takes one incident. And next thing
Yeah.
you know, if there's an assault, a rape, an abduction, and
Yeah.
it happened at a short-term rental, it's all going to go to hell. So, Britt,
Yeah.
your company being a property manager, how do you navigate that?
Sure. So actually, I couldn't agree with Liz more when it comes to the general insufficient ability to implement safety procedures, or for these platforms there's a way to verify your guests, and then
Mhm.
when I show up to properties because there's an issue, I can kind of verify that the amount of people that are there are also registered on the platform. When it comes to filing claims, if there's a major issue, the platforms have all of these different things to kind of back you up, and there are definitely some steps that you have to go through in order to file these claims and rectify the issue.
Mhm.
But to not have those tools, it does impede on my personal processes. My company is very adamant. Like right now, we do safety inspections. We have a 25-point safety inspection that we go through. We make sure all the fire extinguishers are up to date. There's nothing, they aren't expired. All the fire alarms are where they're supposed to be. We actually go as far as putting drop down ladders in our second stories to make sure that our guests are never going to be without. And then all of these directions are in our welcome book. And also in our welcome book are suggestions for local businesses. And we very much take our job seriously when it comes to the guest experience and protecting the homeowner's investment. And as these all three of these folks said, we my clients really want to be a positive part of the community. We take the condition of the home seriously when it comes to the inside and the outside. When we do the turnovers, we also pick up around the property and the perimeter. And I know for a fact my properties, as Liz said, look better than my personal home because we have to. We're always like aiming for those 5-star reviews, and
Mhm.
I know that a general aesthetic is going to do that. So, I feel like the ability to work with homeowners and figure out something that brings us all on the same team is going to be beneficial not only for the guests that we have coming into town that need somewhere to stay. And as somebody who travels like only Airbnb or vacation rental, I'm a mom. I want a kitchen. I want the privacy, right? Like, yes, it's just like way better. And then when you get to have different family members come and stay, it's a different type of vacationing. And not everybody wants to stay in a hotel, motel, Holiday Inn. We want the options. We're a society that really likes options.
Mhm.
So I just feel like it's a matter of figuring it out so that way everybody can be on the same team.
Yes.
Hey, Todd,
Yeah,
real quick, do you encourage short-term property owners to join the chamber because it is a business?
It absolutely is a business. We would love to have them. But again, it's been one of those, we don't know who they are. So
Yes.
it's not like the hotel that goes up that we see, or the bed and breakfast that is there. So we would love to have them. I think there's things we do. Liz talked about how great the downtown is. The chamber's had something to do with that over the last 40 years. So
Yeah.
so has the DBA, so has Discover Saratoga, so has the City Center, and all of us work so well together. We would love to have the short-term rentals, the Alliance, as a partner working with us going forward. That would be awesome. But, I think it's important to say this. You could say it in any industry, right? You could say it in real estate. You could say it in chambers. You could say it in the law. You could say it in short term. Not everyone treats their property the way that Britt and Liz do.
Right.
So we do have examples locally in Saratoga already where we know outside investors are coming in and buying up properties. They're then going to the planning board design review because they have to make modifications. And in doing those modifications, they're using cheap materials because that's what they can get away with if the
Hmm.
planning board and the design review committee allow them to do that. We know, we just know, and we don't want that, right? When you have absentee landlords, whether it's multifamily or short-term rentals, you're going to have issues. And
Right.
that's why I think we have to have some local controls. We've got to have, I loved Britt, by the way. I looked at your website. I loved the 25-point safety plan. I loved the certification. That's what every short-term rental owner ought to be doing, right? So the question is, how do we make sure that happens within a municipality? And the only one that can do that is the municipality. And the only way they can do that is through regulation.
So, Britt,
Yeah.
Britt, it sounds like you need to expand your business to all counties. You're going to be a millionaire, so I'm going to stay
I
friends with you.
I like offer it for $50. Literally, I don't want to make anything off of it.
Okay.
And I'm really upfront about that. It costs me around $50 in payroll to get someone in there to do it. So like you know what I mean? Like I'm literally just trying to make sure that we're living in those horror stories. There's a bunch of horror stories on both sides, on guests and on homeowners. And so I try to navigate that. And I do want to add something, Todd, like unfortunately, it seems like the Discover Saratoga group, especially, is trying to figure out a way to work with people who have Airbnbs, but they're not sure yet. And so, actually, from my understanding, if you list your property on Airbnb, they won't list it on their accommodations part of their website. I'm not
Yeah,
sure you know what I mean, like the details on it. I just know that specifically because I, of course, want to always like be on every platform, right? Like it's smart for us to be on VRBO and be on Airbnb and be on Booking.com if it makes sense for the property. And so that's one that I just have seen that red tape there. And maybe after we establish some of these regulations and we have something in place, Discover Saratoga will open up their website and allow us to, if we list it on Airbnb, we can also list it there too.
yeah.
Hopefully.
So I mean, it's minor technicality. We can have a
Of
conversation
course.
offline, and we'll just say Discover Saratoga. Their budget, the bulk, the vast majority of their budget comes from the occupancy taxes that are collected by the hotels and lodging properties.
Right.
So their
Okay.
mission is very specific. It's about heads and beds, and that is
Yeah.
the more traditional way of looking at it with the hotels, who through their guests are actually paying for Discover to go out and promote and get
Yeah.
even more people here to benefit everyone. So, but again, we
Yeah.
can have that conversation offline.
I want to
Yeah.
talk
And
about something that,
Chris, and if I may circle back to
yeah.
something too, just something that Liz had mentioned and talked about. Up where I live in Warren County, they actually do collect a 4% occupancy tax from short-term rental owners, and that money does get used and is earmarked to promote tourism in the area up here. So that is certainly something that is possible. And also, let's just keep
And
in mind
who pays that? Is it the guest or is it the homeowner?
it's the homeowner.
Yeah.
And just to keep also in mind that short-term rentals, Airbnbs, those have been around for about 10 to 12 years at least at this point.
Hmm.
So it's not necessarily anything that's completely new. So if we take a look around, there are some models from other cities throughout the country that Saratoga could take a look at, and other municipalities too can take a look at to borrow ideas to see maybe what's worked for them, what hasn't worked so well. There's some cities that have implemented a multi-tiered permit system depending on what type of property it is. If is it an owner-occupied property that just has one unit? Is it owner-occupied that has multiple units? Or is it an investment property with one or more units? Just so that those can be, potentially classified and treated differently. Maybe the inspections want to be done more regularly on a property that's not owner occupied, with the thought process being, the absentee landlord sort of addressing those issues as opposed to the person who actually lives in the property and maintains the property as they're living in it.
I wanted to ask about the neighborhood, and we've mentioned a couple of times where community and neighbors had concerns. I haven't heard that because I don't own a unit, but can anyone, one of you, talk about whether that's a pro or a con for the community? I know some HOAs don't allow short-term rentals in their, developments, but talk about the neighborhoods that do have them. Have we heard any complaints, and what would they be?
I so with the variety of places that I have, I feel like I can do. I've had both positive and negative experiences with neighbors. I am very much of the mindset that when I show up to a place, I will introduce myself to basically anyone who's outside and
Hmm.
let them know that I exist. I'm the boots on the ground. If my team members are the ones that are going in and out of the house, and I establish a line of communication, and that seems to like streamline any issues. So that way, they have someone to call. That person's going to pick up the phone, and we're going to be there in 30 minutes. That's our whole goal, is just we have to be there very quickly, or at least get a hold of the guest and figure it out. So I just feel like, our company specifically takes that very seriously, and we
Hmm.
are really adamant about creating a line of communication with neighbors. And there has been times where, like, we can't let our guests hang out by the pool past like 7 p.m., which, as you guys know, during the summer, it's still light out. So that was a huge issue with that property.
Hmm.
So, there's different things that we try to overcome. And if we have to, like, have uncomfortable conversations with our guests in order to keep
Right.
our neighborhood integrity, then we're going to do that. It's just, we just like to make sure that we're all trying to be coexisting together.
Yeah, and Britt, I think that's important, and your company does a fantastic job at doing that and maintaining that. And I think to Todd's point is that it's just important to have a maybe a floor, like a baseline,
Yeah.
like a minimum standards that everyone can adhere to. Because unfortunately, not everybody will behave or treat the properties the way that you and Liz do.
Yeah.
But again, back to an earlier point that I made too, we do have existing rules in place that can address some of these things, such as the nuisance issues. And also, Todd, one thing you mentioned about the cheap materials being used. Well, the planning board in town, they can not allow those things if that's something that needs to be a little bit more stricter on those types of plans. So we have other ways of addressing some of these issues without having to make a regulation that's overly restrictive for short-term rentals just on the council level.
Liz?
I agree with everybody. Just thinking about the tiered system, and we've talked about this in our alliance, but what about a violation system? So say you get one violation. Well, this is and you need to be registered because that's I think that's how you'll be able to track everything. But you get up to three violations, and then you're just hit with fees. You're hit with tickets. It goes further and further, and that's when you start to be like, listen, you can't have these rights if you're not going to be respectful in the community.
Hmm.
Uh, I
Yeah.
don't know what the answer is. I think it's really difficult because there are amazing. And Britt, I was at the first meeting at the city council that you spoke at back in like 2021 or I don't even know what it was, but I spoke there too. And I
Yeah.
was like, damn, this girl. And I was like, and I got your card, and we only have one property, and we live like a second,
Yeah.
like I can see it from
Yeah.
my house. So I was like, but if I ever get more, I
Yeah.
am hiring her. So I just feel like we are the people right now that we're on this podcast because we care. And like
Yeah.
if we care about this, then we care about our homes. And so we do need to we need to find the middle ground here, but it can't be all the way over here and it can't be all the way over here. But like,
Yeah.
maybe the four of us are the task force that we need to like go together. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
So,
Um,
so oh, I'm sorry, you had something to say. Go ahead, Liz.
well, I do just want to say one thing. Todd, so I actually worked at the Salem Chamber of Commerce in Massachusetts for 2 years. I did my senior thesis on a membership retention in a chamber of commerce. I'm a huge chamber fan. I am also I'm a new business owner as far as real estate, so I would love to join in that regard. But I am a short-term rental business in Saratoga. What if we had like a short-term rental segment in the chamber where all the short-term rental owners could join for a certain fee, help us build a handbook to leave in our short-term rentals, help us build like Brit's guidelines to adhere to, put together community events, put together events where if we have guests from out of town, give them like a snapshot that we could leave behind of like a one pager of what's going on in Saratoga. This is just me like spitfiring right now because I
It's good
freaking
though.
love the chamber and I know what they do. And I don't think people understand enough what a chamber of commerce does.
Mhm.
But to your point, Saratoga is what it is because of your programming.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I appreciate the sales pitch, that's for sure, for the chamber. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
You know, we have a dining guide, we have a map, we have a lot of that already because we work with lodging properties, B&Bs, hotels. So same again, same with Discover, same with the DBA. We collaborate on a ton of that. So happy to do that. Back to the the neighborhood impact. I live in the downtown area where my house is. You never 20 years ago would have seen anybody walking to the track or back from it because you're going in the wrong direction to get away from the downtown. But I see that now, so I know we have in our neighborhood we have a street right behind us, and there is one house on that street I guarantee you is a short-term rental. Can't confirm it, but I can confirm it based on the parties that are held there, and I can tell you that I have no idea who the property owner is. No,
Right.
I don't know who to call. So, my
That's an
concern
issue.
partly with some of these is residents don't know
Mhm.
if you're not that responsible owner, you don't know who to call. And so if there's a noise issue with a party, the police do go. They might write a ticket to that group. They might tell them to quiet down. They might do whatever they do, but that doesn't mean that the property owner ever even knows that happened
Mhm.
because the
You can
city
give
doesn't even
me the
know.
address. I'll help you. I'll help you out figuring out who the owner is. I don't mind.
But it shouldn't be that hard. If we had a registry,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
We'd
I just want to
know.
make sure you know that, like, if you really want to get a hold of that homeowner, I'm like really happy to help you out and facilitate. And like I have
Detective Brit
software.
on
Britt,
duty.
I know. I'm concerned. Britt can find anybody.
There's software for everything right
Todd, I
now.
have a question for you. I mean, without being too transparent,
Sure.
what concerns are you hearing from the established traditional lodging, hotels, motels, people like that?
Oh, Chris, great question. There's an assumption out there in the community that the hotels are opposed to short-term rentals.
Hmm.
I just don't think that's true now.
Okay.
You know what? Maybe when they first disrupted and first started,
Hmm.
but the reality is, let's talk about 2023 as an example. Our hotels in the pandemic, whether it was the pandemic itself, the way people thought differently about travel,
Hmm.
and Cuomo's ridiculous protocols, it devastated our hospitality sector in 2020,
Hmm.
2021. 23 was when we fully recovered. And the benchmark for evaluating your lodging, traditional lodging, is the revenue per available room, RevPAR. We had historic levels of RevPAR in
Hmm.
Saratoga Springs and Saratoga County in 2023. And that is even while we had, again, 1,200 to 1,500 in the city, up to 2,000 in the county, short-term rentals. So I think we've figured out, right? Even the hotels have that short-term rentals are not driving business away.
That's
They're
good to hear.
adding business to our community. It's
Yeah.
a it's it's not
The
a negative,
Alliance
it's a positive.
the Alliance 100% agrees with you on that, Todd. We're also not afraid of the hotels. And actually, I mean, Matthew DiCarlo. He's part of our alliance, and he is a hotel, bed and breakfast, a downtown business. Um, eh, he has a business in Saratoga, and he has Airbnb. So like we don't find any threat, and we don't find any pushback with the hotels.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
So
think, and
you,
I think the other thing about businesses is that, and a number of people have commented in the last, at the hearing, at the press conference about short-term rentals being small businesses that they're very proud of, right?
mhm,
Um, and so the business community just wants some sort of level of fairness, right? That there's a registration process. We know how to contact you. There's an emergency contact. There's an inspection done by the fire department. Those are standard things that every other business goes through. So yes, we have to level the playing field on the registration fee down to
mhm,
what other businesses are being asked to do, right? And
right.
at the same time, we have to ramp up a little bit how short-term rentals are managed by the city
Mhm.
so that it's equivalent to other businesses.
So I have
I
I have a question because I know Liz, you have to leave very soon.
I do,
And
and I have a couple points I want to make before I leave.
all right, well, this is I just want to know how the policymakers and the property owners can strike a balance. How can what do we have to do to get them on common ground where everyone goes peace treaty, and we're not having these schisms going on at city council? But Liz, I'll allow you to say your points and answer that question as well before you bail.
Sure. Well, that actually leads me into the point that I wanted to make. Anybody who's listening who may not be aware of the current legislation, it is, I think, and the Alliance thinks unfairly penalizes homeowners that have rentals in the area. We've talked about the permit fee. The permit fee would be $1,000 per unit, which is very high. The primary owner must reside in the unit at least 185 days a year, which could be difficult. And the owner of the short term rental may not be more than 25 miles away from the short term rental while it's being occupied by the renter. Um, that makes it very difficult if you are the primary owner of the home. And where do you go less than 25 miles away? So, what we're looking for is we would love to have a 6 to 12 month minimum study of effect on housing availability, rental owners, downtown business revenue, how it affects our economy, gathered tourist opinions, surveys through Airbnb, through the Chamber of Commerce for both owners and renters, um, more closely actually mimic the state proposal that's coming down, and honestly just work together to change the policy so that Saratoga may be able to implement an occupancy tax for short-term rentals. Um, but there's and then there's other things like there's a $250 fire inspection every year on top of the $1,000 permit.
Mhm.
There's a yearly you have to inspect and clean out every chimney that you have yearly. Like we don't even require that for long-term renters right now. There's a lot of this. All of this is we don't require it for long-term rentals. Some of these regulations.
Right.
So what is the happy medium? I don't know, but I think that we can get there together after being on this call. I was nervous to come on, but I feel like everybody wants tourism to thrive, and Todd, I would really love to. Oh God, I can't believe I'm saying this because I don't want to take on more because I've already have 2 jobs and 3 kids, but I would love to help you if you would like to start like a short-term rental segment within the chamber. And we can put some sort of Airbnb handbook together that people can leave behind and maps and everything else because I have a notebook, but it's like piecemealed. So I don't know. I think I could even reach out to the alliance and see if how they would feel, but I feel like that would be really cool. Anyways,
Anyways, so listen, Liz, I know you got to go. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to have that same question for the other three. So when you watch the video later, please share this in your group
I
as
will
well as you.
definitely.
But
Guys,
whatever
it was
appointment you
it
got,
was
go to it.
so nice to spend so much time with you. It was so nice to meet you. Britt, when I as I purchase more properties or now that I'm an agent, if
Yeah.
I have people purchasing and they need somebody, a property manager, you're my girl.
Thank you. I
Thank you, Liz. You have a
appreciate
good day,
you.
okay?
Okay, thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.
All right, guys. So, same question to you before we head out. Let's talk about that a little bit. How can we come to common ground between the policymakers and the homeowners? And I'll start with you, Dan, actually, if you want to go.
Yeah, sure. I think the most important thing is just to continue having the conversations and gathering as much information and having the policy decision makers listen to, the people who live in the area that they're serving. I think this is a good start. I think having discussions like this, and that's on this podcast, I
Hmm.
think is another good way of just getting that discussion out there, so that people can talk about it on an intelligent level, and sort of remove the emotion as much as possible, so
Hmm.
that we can just come to a fair agreement. Yeah, I mean, there does have to be some basic registration requirements. There's probably going to have to be some sort of baseline for safety of the homes. What that looks like, we don't know.
Right.
Do we want to keep it in line with fairness with other hotels, motels, B&Bs, things of nature? Like basically like businesses with like businesses.
Hmm.
That seems somewhat fair. Whether we enter into a permit system that's a tiered system or some other type of system, whatever works best for Saratoga. The constituents there and the leaders there will have to continue to just have their conversations. But I think that's going to take time. I don't, at some point though, that trigger is going to have to be pulled. It may not be perfect, but
Hmm.
something might have to be put into place, and then just allow it to be revisited and tweaked to continue to study it to see what works and what doesn't work, and try to make adjustments as they go from there. I think really that's the best way to move forward.
Thank you, Britt.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the things that have already been said. I feel like having some sort of process. I mean, to be honest with you, my homeowners are looking for a process. When people are buying properties, I work with a lot of real estate agents that refer us to their clients, and so I end up being like that person where they're like, where is is there a permit I need to get, is there taxes I need to worry about, and I would love to be able to be like, here's just like in Lake George or in Warrensburg or in the other places where I do have that, I can be like, here's what you have to do, here's the steps, and then
Hmm.
I'm your boots on the ground when it comes to your inspections and different things like that, and we are ahead of it so we know what's required. And it, as it's been said, I'm doing these things regardless. So if for me to have an outline of something, it would just be really beneficial for everybody involved. And I feel like it's important to say the points that Liz presented for the current proposal obviously don't work for my business model. So I am a little worried when it comes to something like that passing, and then my company just no longer being needed. And in this area, of course, I'm an entrepreneur. We figure it out. We
Yeah.
branch out. We do what we need to do.
Mhm.
But it would be really nice to stay here. You have a daughter that is in school here. I want to stay in the area. I want to work in the area. I want to keep everything copacetic for my clients.
Yeah.
My points are definitely a little self-serving, but with that being said, during the time that I've been here, I've had 3 staff members doing turnovers in town.
Mm.
My team members are part of the community that we are creating jobs, and my company is a local business, so I just want to make sure that that's recognized as a humble little point in all of this.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
um,
So Todd, you want to close us out? How can we get to that common ground?
Yeah, so I think there's a line I use all the time: the world is run by those who show up. I think what we saw today is that at least the 5 of us have
Hmm.
showed up. I love Liz's comment earlier, or Britt's comment. I think if we got us in a room with Dylan, we could probably figure this all out,
Yeah.
right? And I do want to say something about the elected officials and this climate that we're in. It's unfortunate. You know, Commissioner Moran and his staff have spent 18 months. They have talked to other communities. They have done at least 4 public workshops. So they have tried to give people an opportunity to show up and help. And the proposal is just a first step. It's been pushed out there. They didn't act on it. There's no schedule when they're going to act on it. So there's some time to, you know, ideate and figure out what has to be changed in that. I know, Dylan certainly is committed to doing that. We've seen a similar thing happen with paid parking downtown.
Hmm.
The Department of Public Works 6 months ago, 4 months ago, came up with a very comprehensive plan that they thought would be great. And as they listened to more and more people in the community, they realized, okay, we can't do this. Okay, we can't do that. And what you have now is a very pared down, vanilla, pretty easy to implement, probably not disruptive proposal that they're going to move forward. And I think that's what's going to happen with short term rentals. The folks that are listening to this that have specific concerns about the proposal should be reaching out and meeting with Dylan Moran and his team. And
Mhm.
maybe there, if you have a lawyer that's working on it, do a red line version. Pull out what needs to be pulled out, cross it out, right? And write in what should be in there. And let's take a look at that. I don't think we need to do a study. I don't think we need to form a task force. Those are generally things that bureaucracies do to delay things. I think we need to act sooner rather than later. And the process is get us all in a room, redline this thing, let's talk it through, and at least start somewhere. Where there's common ground, let's start with that.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for coming on. This will be, disseminated through other social media platforms, and people will hear your voice, and you guys will probably be reached out to. You just never know. But again, I just want to thank you all for taking time out of your day and coming on and talking about this. It was of interest to me. I learned a lot from today. So that's it. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. All right.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you, Chris.
All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care, guys. Have a good one.
You too.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was our short-term rental panel discussion. I learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot as well. I did want to say this will be on a YouTube link. It will also be on other social media as well as TikTok, Facebook, you name it, Instagram, and I will be create reels and shorts and things like that. But if you want to reach out to me or find out how to reach Dan or how to reach Britt or Liz or Todd, just let me know. I'll put that in the notes and we'll go from there. Other than that, you guys have a great day and I will talk to you all later. Thank you.